Have you ever felt the chilling sting of betrayal at the moment you needed someone most? This is the story of a love that turned to ice, and the incredible strength a woman discovered in the ashes of a broken promise. It's about a cold parting. As the monitor marked each beat, she gritted her teeth. Alone in a white room where the echo of silence weighed more than the pain of childbirth. Hundreds of miles away, he toasted with another woman, oblivious to what was happening. There were no flowers, no calls, no hands to hold hers. Just one decision, never again to expect anything from a man who couldn't be there. And when he walked through the door believing everything would be the same, he was met with something that neither his power nor his ego could stop. This is not a story of revenge. It is a story of self-love, of family, and of the strength of a woman who chose to start over. Outside, the spring sun shone brightly over Madrid. But inside Clara's penthouse, the air hung heavy like lead. From the large glass windows of the living room, Retiro Park stretched out like a vibrant green stain, framed by the clear sky and stately buildings. However, despite the view, the enveloping silence, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee, Clara Valdez could not find peace. Her 9-month pregnant body awkwardly settled into the white linen sofa as she ran a hand over the tense curve of her belly. Mateo moved inside with the force of a restless child, as if he sensed that something in the air wasn't quite right. Alexander had not yet left the bedroom. She could hear him walking with confident steps on the wooden floor, closing zippers, talking on the phone in that low tone of voice he reserved for negotiations. Clara knew his every gesture by heart. After 6 years of marriage, she had learned to read the silences between his sentences, the way his gaze would shift a half-second before he lied. It was not an intuition she wanted to have, but the pregnancy had made her more sensitive, less willing to ignore the obvious. When Alexander finally appeared in the living room, he was dressed in an impeccable dark blue suit, a luxury watch gleaming on his wrist and his hair precisely combed. He looked exactly as he did on the covers of financial magazines, confident, successful, unquestionable. He held a steaming cup of coffee in his hand, which he offered to her with a perfectly calibrated smile. "For you, darling," he said, and sat down across from her. Clara accepted the cup, although she had no appetite. She had felt a knot in her stomach for days, one that was not due to the pregnancy. Her husband looked at her carefully, assessing her expression. She smiled slightly. "What time is your flight?" she asked in a neutral voice. "In an hour and a half, I'm going straight from here with the company car. The jet is taking me to Copenhagen. Key meeting with investors. I promise to be back before the weekend." Clara nodded without saying anything. She watched him avoid holding her gaze for more than a few seconds. There was something rehearsed about his entire speech, as if every word were measured. Years ago, she would have been convinced of his sincerity. Today, she had learned to detect the cracks. "Who are you meeting with exactly?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "With the Danish team and a Norwegian fund," he replied without hesitation, but his eyes sought hers too quickly, as if checking to see if she believed him. The silence that followed was dense. Only the noise of distant traffic, muffled by the double-paned windows, broke the stillness. Clara took a sip of the coffee without tasting it. Alexander approached and knelt in front of her. He took her hands with an almost theatrical tenderness. "Clara, if you have any real contractions, just one, call me. The plane will be on standby. I swear I'll come right back." She looked at him, searching for something genuine in his face. She had done it so many times. She had defended him to her sister Lucy, to her own conscience, denying the perfume scents on his shirts, the mood swings after business trips. But that morning, something inside her broke. It wasn't anger yet, or pain. It was a sad, silent certainty. "Okay," she whispered. Alexander smiled and kissed her forehead. Then he stood up and picked up his leather briefcase. "I love you," he said as he walked away. "I love you, too," Clara replied in a faint voice, watching his back as he disappeared down the hallway. The lie tasted like ash. The front door closed with a faint click. Then the penthouse was silent again. Clara remained motionless for a long moment, clinging to the coffee cup as if it were an anchor. Then she took a deep breath and placed the cup on the glass table. She got up with effort, walked to her desk, and turned on her laptop. Her fingers trembled as she typed into the browser, "Private flight tracking Spain." It was a trick Lucy had taught her in a casual conversation months ago. Her heart pounded when the result appeared. A jet registered to Neurax, Alexander's company, had a flight planned not to Copenhagen, but to Malaga. Malaga. The word hit her like a slap. Images of luxury hotels by the sea, infinity pools, cocktails on private terraces flashed through her mind. It was not a work destination. It was a place for escape, for lovers. The knot in her stomach tightened. Matteo moved inside her as if responding to her anguish. For a moment, her vision blurred. This time, I'm going to find out, she thought. It wasn't jealousy. It was dignity. It was the need not to give birth alone while the man she still said she loved was sunbathing with another woman. She returned to the sofa, turned on her phone, and wrote a short message. "Lucy, come over as soon as you can. Urgent." She didn't have to say more. Her sister had always known when to show up. And this time, Clara didn't have the strength to pretend. The sun shone high over Retiro. But inside that silent penthouse, a storm was just beginning to take shape. The inevitable truth. The pain arrived like an unexpected wave. Just when Clara thought she could hold on a little longer, it was a dry, deep pull that pierced her lower back and stole her breath for a few seconds. She stayed still on the sofa, her fingers clutching the cushion, her face pale as another contraction appeared just minutes later. They were not false alarms. This time she knew little Matteo was on his way, and he would do so without his father. She still felt the bitter taste of the discovery in her throat. Alexander's private jet was headed to Malaga, not Copenhagen, as he had assured her that morning. Malaga, with its postcard beaches, had nothing to do with Danish investors. Everything fit together too well. It wasn't the first time Clara had had doubts, but it was the first time the evidence was irrefutable. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to move. She couldn't be paralyzed. Matteo depended on her. She took a deep breath and wrote a second message to Lucy. "It's urgent. I'm having contractions." Only 10 minutes passed before the doorbell rang. Lucy, her hair wet from the spring drizzle, rushed in, a backpack over her shoulder and her phone in her hand. As soon as she saw her sister's face, she knew that it wasn't just the birth that was at stake. "Tell me I'm wrong," was the first thing Clara said, her voice choked by another wave of pain. Lucy didn't ask anything. She held her arm firmly as she helped her up from the sofa. "How far apart are the contractions?" 3 minutes. "They're intense." "Then let's go. The taxi is downstairs." As they went down the elevator, Lucy took out her phone. In seconds, she was scrolling through social media, her fingers as fast as a pianist in full performance. Clara, between gasps, looked at her sideways. She didn't need words. Her sister knew what she was looking for. And when they got to the car, Lucy stopped short. "No way," she murmured, her voice tinged with anger. She showed Clara the screen. An Instagram story posted less than half an hour ago. The profile belonged to Natalie Rivers, Alexander's personal assistant. The video showed an infinity pool with a view of a garden full of bougainvillea, 2 glasses of champagne resting on the edge of the water, and then briefly, 2 pairs of feet in the water. One of them, without a doubt, was Alexander's. Clara didn't need anything else. She felt a new contraction double her over inside the taxi. But this time, it wasn't just physical. It was betrayal that clung to her body. Why would he do it now? She groaned through gritted teeth. Because he thinks no one would dare look. Lucy didn't hesitate. Because he thinks he can get away with anything. The driver, an elderly man with a Castilian accent, looked in the rearview mirror with concern. Are we going to Ruber International? Yes, Lucy replied with determination. And quickly, please. The journey felt eternal. Clara breathed as best she could, her eyes closed, trying to hold herself together. Lucy held her hand and at the same time wrote messages at full speed to Isabel Ferrer, to her press contact, to a nurse friend who could help from the inside. The plan was forming almost by itself, guided by indignation and protective instinct. At the hospital, the nurses greeted her with efficiency. One of them recognized her last name and gave Clara a knowing smile, as if she already knew who her husband was. They took her to the labor room. Lucy didn't leave her side. Have you texted him? Clara asked between sighs. Lucy lowered her gaze to her phone. 4 times. It goes straight to voicemail. I left him messages. Clara is in labor. We're at Ruber, room 302. Everything. I also sent him Natalie's story, just in case he has a shred of decency left. Clara closed her eyes. Another contraction, this time stronger, more definitive. The monitor began to beep more intensely. A nurse hurried in and told them they would soon move her to the delivery room. Lucy leaned toward her sister. You're not alone. We're almost there. Clara squeezed her hand hard. For the first time, she felt something more than pain. She felt focus. It was no longer just about suffering or crying. There was a goal, a purpose. She had to give birth, yes, but she also had to regain control of her life. And she wouldn't do it out of hatred, but out of certainty. Mateo would not be born in the midst of a lie. When they moved her to the operating room, Lucy stayed waiting outside, writing messages in silence. Among them, one was clear and direct. Isabel, activate everything. It has already begun. We won't wait for him to deign to show up. From inside the room, Clara's first cry of childbirth was heard. It was a raw, vital sound. A woman's roar piercing through the pain with the force of someone who, at that very moment, was rebuilding herself. The storm had begun. And it didn't come alone. A mother's fury. You are going to have this baby, and then we are going to burn his glass palace. Ah, sometimes an image is worth more than 1,000 excuses. And it also destroys 1,000 lies. The delivery room at Ruber International Hospital was white, almost blinding under the cold lights of the ceiling. Everything smelled of disinfectant and control, except for Clara, who felt broken, hot inside, like a storm trapped in flesh. The heart monitor beeped to the rhythm of the baby's accelerated heartbeats, and the creaks of the nurse's uniforms sounded like thunder around her. The contractions followed one another quickly, with force, as if her body knew it could not wait any longer. Lucy was by her side, standing, phone in hand, her expression tense. She didn't speak, but her eyes never stopped scanning the screen. She was like a sentry in the middle of chaos, firm, focused, even though she was boiling inside. The last time she had tried to call Alexander, he hadn't answered. Not a word, not a notification. Voicemail was his only response. Clara, panting, opened her eyes for a moment. Has he responded? Nothing, Lucy said without looking away from the phone. Just silence. As always, Clara closed her eyes again. Another pain doubled her over from the inside. This time it was sharper. It wasn't just a contraction. It was rage. The certainty of having been abandoned, despised at the most vulnerable moment of her life. Not by a stranger, but by the man who had promised to be there. Lucy slowly lowered her phone. She took a deep breath. Then she opened Instagram again, almost out of inertia. Natalie Rivers had a public profile. She always had. She liked to be seen. She liked to show off the life she couldn't afford on her own merits. Lucy, with the expert fingers of a journalist, navigated through photos of cocktails on rooftops, gallery openings, dinners on exclusive terraces, everything so curated, so calculated. And then she saw it. A story published less than an hour ago. A short panoramic video filmed from an infinity pool. The water turquoise, and in the background, olive groves cascaded under a sky splashed with pink and orange. The sound of female laughter. The clinking of glasses. Then, for a brief second, the camera went down and two pairs of feet could be seen in the water. One with red nail polish, the other larger, male, unmistakable. Lucy felt a knot in her throat. Her face changed, her jaw hardened. "No way," she whispered. "What?" Clara asked, her voice muffled. Lucy hesitated for an instant. Then she approached her. She showed her the video. Clara looked at it. Alexander's feet. She recognized them better than her own. She had massaged them for years after his long workdays. And there they were, in a luxury pool in the middle of Marbella, intertwined with those of his assistant, while she lay on that gurney, sweating, bleeding, fighting to bring their son into the world. It was as if the digital world had crashed into the physical one. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact. Clara let out a cry that didn't sound human, a lament full of rage, pain, and desperation. The monitor beeped faster. The nurses came running. "High blood pressure," one of them said. "Clara, breathe with me." "Breathe, honey," another said, trying to calm her. But Clara couldn't breathe. The physical pain mixed with humiliation, with the total loss of control. She felt like a broken doll under a clinical light. She wanted to push the phone away from her sight, but it was too late. The image had been seared into her mind. Lucy, trembling, took her hand. "Listen to me," she said, lowering her voice with the firmest tone she could muster. "Forget him. He doesn't exist right now. Only you and Matteo matter. You're going to bring him into the world. You're going to be a mother. And when this is over, we'll take care of him. I promise." Clara looked at her sister. The love that burned in her eyes was the only thing that was real in that room. She squeezed her hand with a new, almost defiant force. For the first time in days, she felt she had the right to be angry, to defend herself, to choose not to be a victim. Another contraction shook her. The nurses asked to move her already. She was dilated. It was time. "Tell Isabel," Clara murmured, her teeth clenched. "I want the best. I want the shark. I want this not to go unpunished." Lucy nodded. "I've already contacted her. She's ready." The doctor entered at that instant. She had a calm, professional look. She spoke to Clara in a soft voice. "Come on, Mrs. Valdez. It's time to push. Your son is almost here." Clara closed her eyes. And when she did, she realized something. She wasn't just going to push her son into the world. She was also leaving behind the old Clara, the wife who kept silent, the woman who waited, the one who justified everything. That Clara was staying behind. The new one was being born now, along with her son, forged by betrayal, galvanized by a mother's righteous fury. Outside, the rain was stopping. The sky over Madrid was opening in clear streaks. And the storm now was her. The silent war. While Clara fought to bring a new life into the world, Lucy was planting the seed of a silent war. In the hallway outside the delivery room, with the footsteps of nurses in the background and the intermittent beeping of monitors, Lucy paced back and forth like a caged lion. The phone in her hand vibrated with notifications, but she knew who she had to contact at that moment. She dialed a number she had saved with a simple shark emoji. On the other end, a calm voice, low and firm, answered immediately. Isabel Ferrer speaking. With whom do I have the pleasure? Lucy Valdez. Clara Valdez's sister. My sister is in labor right now. Her husband, Alexander Fuentes, is in Marbella with his personal assistant. We have proof. There was a brief pause. Then Isabel's voice took on a different nuance, professional, sharp. Continue. We have a screenshot of Natalie Rivers's public Instagram story with geolocation, a private flight record from Nurax to Malaga, screenshots of messages and audios, and above all, we have a broken woman giving birth alone. Clara wants to initiate legal action. Understood. Does he know you know? No. We'll continue to play along with the Copenhagen story. Perfect. Lucy stopped in front of the hallway vending machine. She wasn't hungry, but she needed something to chew on so she wouldn't scream. The sound of the elevator opening made her turn, but it wasn't anyone she recognized. Can you send everything to the email address I'm going to give you? Isabel asked calmly. My legal team will get started as soon as we receive the documentation. Lucy took a folder from her backpack. She always carried paper backups, like a good journalist. She quickly scanned the documents with an app and sent them while she was talking. Can you activate precautionary measures? If what you tell me is corroborated and from what I see, it will base. We will initiate a divorce lawsuit for aggravated adultery, a request for a restraining order, and a precautionary freeze of marital assets. As soon as he sets foot in Barajas, he will be trapped. Lucy smiled without joy. That's what we want, for him to have no way out. The lawyer paused. Then her voice lowered, almost confidential. Tell your sister not to contact him. Not a message, not a call. Absolute silence. Let him believe that everything is still the same. That way, the fall will be more effective. She's in the delivery room. She has no mind to write to him right now, but I'll remind her. Isabel ended the conversation with a dry phrase. In less than an hour, you'll have our fee agreement in your email. My team is already tracing properties, accounts, and movements. Let him enjoy his last hours of peace. Lucy hung up and put her phone away with hands that were still tense. She took a deep breath. She forced herself to relax. She looked out the hallway window. The sky over Madrid was still gray, but in the distance, a small, clear patch was opening up. At that moment, a nurse came out of the room. She had a professional but gentle expression. Family of Clara Valdez. Lucy immediately approached. How is everything going? She's in active labor. She's being strong. The baby is doing well. It will be a matter of an hour, maybe less. Lucy nodded and let herself fall into one of the seats in the hallway. She sat looking at the floor, the gray lines of the marble, and thought of her sister, of the years she had watched her give up herself for that marriage. Clara, always so proper, so elegant, so willing to give the benefit of the doubt. But that was over. She took out her phone again. She went to Natalie's profile. She knew that woman couldn't resist visibility. She almost expected there to be more proof. And there they were. An old post in which she referred to Alexander as, my tireless mentor. A comment with a double meaning. Photos at company events where she always stood by his side. Lucy saved it all. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a cleansing, a rebuilding. An hour later, the email notification vibrated on her screen. It was Isabel Ferrer's contract, scanned and digitally signed. Attached were also the letter of intent for the court, the drafts of precautionary measures, and a list of assets registered in Alexander Fuentes's name. Lucy would forward it to Clara later. For now, her sister had to focus on bringing Mateo into the world. From the other side of the wall, a muffled, deep sound came. A long cry, a mixture of pain and power. Lucy stood up immediately. That's my sister, she thought, and no one will ever break her again. In the silence of the hallway, with the footsteps of nurses and the distant murmur of the city on the other side of the glass, Lucy felt that something had changed. That Clara was no longer the woman who had looked at her with insecure eyes a few hours ago. Something in her had awakened, and that new Clara was going to be a hurricane. When Alexander returns to Madrid, he will not find a house, a wife, or a reputation. The King's Fall. Alexander returned to Madrid with a flower in his hand and a well-rehearsed lie on his tongue. On board his private jet, he had gone over the perfect speech again and again, that the meeting in Copenhagen had been extended longer than expected, that he had lost reception, that he barely had time to sleep. He carried a cheap snow globe from the Oslo airport in his briefcase as proof of that technical stop. He had even ordered white flowers for Clara. He planned to arrive at the hospital, kiss her on the forehead, apologize for his absence, and hold his son as if nothing had happened. The private runway at Barajas Airport looked quiet as evening fell. The jet taxied slowly toward the hangar. Alexander adjusted his tie and combed his hair with his fingers. He hadn't slept well for days, not out of remorse, but from the effort of covering every trace. He had deleted all of Natalie's photos, cleared the hotel reservations, and deactivated the location tags. In his mind, he was still in control. When the plane stopped, the staircase was deployed. Alexander descended with a firm step, his jacket slung over his shoulder, confident in himself. A few feet away, a black sedan was waiting for him on the runway. He assumed it was his usual driver, but when he approached, he realized that the person waiting for him wasn't Francisco. A short woman with gray hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, a pearl gray pantsuit, and an imperturbable expression watched him attentively. By her side, two suited men, large as pillars, stood firm. She took a step forward. "Mr. Alexander Fuentes," she said in a clear voice, without raising it. "Yes," he replied, disconcerted. "Who are you? Where is my driver?" "My name is Isabel Ferrer. I am the lawyer for your wife, Clara Valdez." A slight shiver ran down Alexander's spine. The name was not unknown to him. Isabel Ferrer was a feared figure in Madrid's legal circles. The press nicknamed her the Iron Judge, although she was never a judge, she simply won. Always. He tried to smile, gesturing with the hand that held the snow globe. "I just got back. My wife is in labor. I was coming from work. I've been in Oslo." "We know," Isabel interrupted him in a neutral, almost bored tone. "In fact, we have proof that your jet was not in Copenhagen or Oslo until after it landed in Malaga. We know everything." "What is this?" "A divorce lawsuit for adultery, a temporary restraining order on marital assets, and a court order that prevents you from entering the residence in the Salamanca neighborhood. From this moment on, you must not approach your wife or your son or the property, nor can you move any assets until further notice." The snow globe hung uselessly from his right hand. "You have profoundly underestimated the woman you married," Isabel replied. "She is the queen, and you have been cast out of the kingdom." A photographer hidden in the distance captured the scene. Alexander took a step back, confused, looking for air. "You can't do this to me," he murmured, pathetic even to his own ears. "Of course we can," Isabel replied, already turning toward the sedan. "In fact, it's already done. I recommend you get in the car. One of my assistants will take you to the hotel of your choice. Good luck." One of the men opened the back door. Alexander had no choice. He got in. The leather of the seat was cold. The manila envelope on his legs seemed to weigh a ton. Irreconcilable differences, emotional cruelty, aggravated adultery. His feet and Natalie's intertwined in the pool, with the caption, "Paradise." Outside, twilight was falling over Madrid. His whole plan, his whole image, his control had evaporated. The news had exploded like a bomb in all national media. At Murex headquarters, right on the Paseo de la Castellana, the atmosphere was tense. Employees who used to exchange jokes at the coffee machine avoided looking at each other. The private elevator that went up to the executive floor rose more slowly than usual, as if it knew what was about to happen. He had spent the night in a discreet suite at the Palace Hotel, alone, surrounded by legal papers and bottles of sparkling water. His phone didn't stop vibrating with calls from journalists, messages from former partners, and Twitter notifications. He knew he couldn't control what was coming, but he at least wanted to talk to the board before others did. "Context," interrupted the chairwoman of the board, a middle-aged woman with a firm voice. Another member held up his phone. "Is it true that you charged the hotel expenses in Marbella through a shell company linked to Murex?" The silence was thick as oil. He tried to change the focus. "The technology we have built is still solid. This doesn't affect the product. It's a passing storm." "The storm may pass, but not with you," the chairwoman said. "We need to send a clear message to the market. The board has decided by a majority that you take an indefinite leave, effective immediately." It was something more elegant, more lethal, silent exile. The child was sleeping with his mouth slightly open, his tiny fists clenched, completely oblivious to the storm that was swirling around his existence. Clara was sitting by the window in cotton pajamas with a soft blanket over her legs. There was no sound. It wasn't necessary. Clara didn't smile. She didn't feel victorious. There was no revenge in her eyes, only determination. The tablet vibrated. The subject line read, "Valdez Foundation. Registration approved." Clara opened it and read it in silence. The ministry had officially approved the creation of the Valdez Foundation, whose purpose would be to offer legal and psychological assistance to women who are victims of economic, emotional, or social abuse by their partners. Its first office would be in Chimbery. It had enough funds to operate for at least 5 years without the need for external donations. "I promise." "Have you seen it? Do you feel better?" "It's not about that. I feel free." Then she held out a cup of coffee. "To the beginning of the end." Outside, Madrid continued with its routine. People strolled through Retiro. The markets opened their doors. A new fight. For years of silence can seem like an eternity until the past comes knocking on your door. The orange leaves crunched underfoot on the sidewalk, and the pale gray sky seemed to hold a long-contained breath. In the main office of the Valdez Foundation, located on a quiet street in Chimbery, Clara was reviewing a particularly delicate file. The office smelled of freshly brewed coffee and new paper. Mateo, now almost 4 years old, was at school, and Clara took advantage of the morning hours to work in peace. Until her phone rang. The words floated in the air like sharp glass. Clara closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. Now he was returning, and he wanted to see Mateo. He claims he has changed, that he has been rehabilitated, that he feels profound remorse, that he wants to get back the relationship with his son before it's too late. Clara placed the pen on the table gently. "I guess his business ventures in Dubai didn't work out as he expected." "Exactly," Isabel confirmed. "My sources say he lost capital in a startup that didn't take off. He's far from bankruptcy, but he's no longer on his golden Olympus. And as often happens with men who lose power, they look back for some way to regain it." Clara didn't respond immediately. She stood up and walked to the window. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her own face, more serene, firmer than it had been years ago. "He's not going to get it from me," she finally said. "Of course," the lawyer replied. Clara took a deep breath. It didn't surprise her. Alexander had always known how to manipulate narratives, but this time she was not the same. Clara nodded. Lucy closed the door behind her and sat down opposite, resting her elbows on the table. "I know," Clara said, "but it's not going to be easy." Lucy snorted. "So, what are we going to do?" Clara looked up. There was no longer any doubt in her eyes, only determination. "Whatever it takes." Everything was well archived: divorce documents, statements, flight logs, screenshots. The next day, upon picking up her son from school, she ran into a mother from the parents' group. She asked casually if it was true that Mateo's father had returned. "Not yet." That night, while Mateo colored on the living room table with markers, Clara served him a glass of milk with cookies. 3 stick figures holding hands and a bright sun above. "Who are they, sweetheart?" she asked tenderly. "It's about us." The television stage. The set of the public channel was decorated with neutral colors, warm light, and instrumental background music. Everything was calculated to inspire trust, closeness, emotion. "We know it hasn't been easy for you to take this step. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I think it's important to speak from the heart when you have nothing left to lose." Clara watched everything from the sofa in her penthouse, with Mateo already asleep in his room. On the coffee table, the cups of chamomile tea were still steaming. "Not a day goes by that I don't regret it. I have watched him grow up alone in photographs, in press clippings, and each image has hurt me like a new wound." The host nodded with a pained expression. Lucy snorted. Clara continued to watch without blinking. "He's rehearsed it," Lucy said. Alexander continued, "I don't blame Clara. I know I made her suffer, and I understand if she holds a grudge, but I want her to know that I'm not here for me. I'm here for him." She pressed the button, and the television went blank. Silence filled the room. "You don't want to watch the end?" Lucy asked. "What comes next will be more of the same." Lucy watched her. On her face, there was no anger, no sadness. It was a message from Isabel Ferrer. "I expected this. Don't worry, I have a few things up my sleeve. We'll talk tomorrow." Clara read it and then showed it to her sister. "If what you think is a masterful twist, yes." The next morning, social media was divided. Many praised Alexander for his courage in exposing himself. Others recalled the pool video, the abandonment in the middle of childbirth, the 4-year disappearance. Others harsher, redemption or strategy. Clara did not issue any statements. She did not give interviews. She continued with her routine. The next day, a magazine published the image with the headline, "The Strong Mother." Clara Valdez responds with silence. "Yes," Clara admitted, taking a slow sip. "But what he doesn't know is that now I'm not alone. Not even in my defense." To Isabel Ferrer and her ace up her sleeve. But he still didn't know that the real blow would not come from the media or from the public, but from the past. Isabel calls tomorrow, and when she does, nothing will ever be the same again. The final verdict. The worn stone steps, the imposing columns, and the main entrance flanked by guards seemed more intimidating than usual. The media crowded the sidewalk, microphones ready, cameras on. It was the trial everyone was waiting for. Alexander Fuentes, the disgraced former magnate, faced Clara Valdez for the right to see his son, Mateo. Clara was sitting next to Isabel Ferrer, dressed in a dark blue suit and a cream-colored blouse. Her face was serene, but her hands clasped in her lap betrayed her internal tension. On the other side, Alexander maintained a contrite posture in a light gray suit, a folder of documents in front of him. His lawyer, a young man with the air of a rising star, whispered instructions in his ear. The judge, a woman in her 60s with short hair and reading glasses, opened the session with a firm voice. The defendant, Clara Valdez, is present and represented by her lawyer, Ms. Isabel Ferrer. In a temperate voice, he spoke of reflection, of past mistakes, of the redemption of a man who had hit rock bottom and wanted to reconnect with his son. He only wishes to get to know the child he brought into the world. He is willing to begin with supervised visits without disrupting the child's stability. The judge nodded slightly and looked toward Isabel Ferrer. Miss Ferrer? Isabel stood up with the air of someone who plans every move weeks in advance. Your Honor, we are not going to deny the facts. Mr. Fuentes is the biological father of Mateo, but he is not the father who has been present. He has shown no interest, no affection, and no responsibility for the past 4 years. During that time, Mateo has been raised with love, stability, and an emotional structure that does not include Mr. Fuentes. And now that his public image has fallen, he intends to use this child as a bridge to redemption. It opened, and a woman entered who made Alexander's face instantly pale. Natalie Rivers. She walked with a firm step without looking at her former lover. She sat down in front of the judge and after swearing to tell the truth, she began to speak. During my relationship with Mr. Fuentes, I was a direct witness to his opinions about his unborn child. On multiple occasions, he assured me that he did not plan to be present at the birth, that it was a formality that could be dispensed with. I have come here because after these years, and now that I have my own family, I cannot remain silent. The entire room fell silent. She just lowered her head slightly, as if finally a heavy weight had been lifted from her back. Isabel, for her part, maintained her expression intact. Then she looked up and addressed Alexander. Mr. Fuentes, according to the law, you have the right to request visitation, but you also have the duty to demonstrate a real, sustained, and respectful commitment to the minor's well-being. The request for visitation is denied, the judge declared. The sound of the gavel hitting the table was dry and definitive. Outside the courtroom, the photographers were waiting. But Clara did not stop. She did not need to. For an instant, her gaze crossed with Alexander's, still standing next to the witness stand. She saw him defeated, not repentant, just furious and alone. Clara did not flinch. That night at home, while Mateo slept, Clara poured 2 glasses of wine and sat down next to Lucy on the terrace. You know what the best part of it all was? Lucy asked, smiling. Clara nodded, raising her glass. People change. Or maybe they just get tired of the lies. And for the first time in years, she toasted not to having won, but to having protected what she loved most. A luminous scar. He has lost. And we no longer look back. Sometimes it comes with the firm voice of a mother who no longer doubts. It was a Sunday morning in Madrid. In Clara Valdez's penthouse, the day began with a new but deeply symbolic ritual. Mateo, now a full 4 years old, ran back and forth in his astronaut costume. Lucy followed him with a broomstick that served as a rocket as she laughed out loud. Clara watched them from the open kitchen, preparing breakfast with calm movements. Her hair was in a low braid, and she wore a light robe over her linen dress. On her face, for the first time in a long time, there was not a trace of tension. On the dining table, a black folder was waiting. Inside was the complete court resolution, Natalie's statements, the documents that legally protected Mateo. Lucy went to open it and returned accompanied by Isabel Ferrer, always impeccable, this time with a wine-colored scarf and a warmer smile than usual. Always, Clara replied, pouring her a cup. Clara nodded. She did not celebrate with words. She just closed her eyes for a second. A cycle was closing. One that began with pain and that was now ending with clarity. And him? Lucy asked. Alexander left Madrid yesterday, Isabel replied. He went back to Dubai. Apparently, he has a new technology project, but the local press is no longer following him. He's out of the spotlight, alone. There was a brief silence, not uncomfortable, but respectful, as if they all understood that that story, although not named, was no longer a part of their lives. I don't feel hatred, Clara suddenly murmured. And that's what surprises me the most. I'm not happy about his fall. I'm happy about our new life. Lucy took her hand for a moment. Isabel nodded with a serene gesture. It's because you no longer need to hate. You are already free. A few hours later, they went out together to Retiro Park. It was a day for families, for children on bicycles, for elderly people walking slowly, for soft street music at the entrance to the Rosalita. Clara held Mateo's hand while he pointed to every dog, every bird, every fallen leaf as if it were the first time he had seen them. When they got to the pond, they sat on a bench. Mateo ate an ice cream, and Clara watched him in silence. You know, she said, not looking at anyone in particular. For a long time, I thought that motherhood was something I had to prove. That I had to be perfect, silent, balanced, like a statue. But now I understand that's not it. That being a mother is also crying with your child, laughing for no reason, losing your mind sometimes, and still moving forward. Lucy looked at her with a luminous smile. You are the best mother Mateo could have because you choose him every day, and because you choose yourself too. Years melted into a beautiful collage of moments. Mateo grew, his laughter filling every corner of the penthouse that was once so silent. The Valdez Foundation flourished, becoming a nationally recognized beacon of hope for countless women, with Clara at its helm, a leader known for her compassion and unwavering strength. She found love again, not in a grand, dramatic romance, but in the quiet, steady companionship of a man who admired her for who she was, a man who celebrated her strength and cherished her son as his own. Lucy became an award-winning journalist, her stories giving a voice to the voiceless, always with her sister and nephew as her anchor. One sunny afternoon, on Mateo's 8th birthday, the four of them were in Retiro Park, near the same pond. Mateo, no longer a little astronaut but a boy with a bright, curious mind, launched a toy sailboat into the water. As it drifted away, Clara looked at the life she had built. It wasn't the life she had once planned, but it was so much more. It was real, it was earned, and it was hers. She had not just survived the storm, she had learned to dance in the rain, and now, she was finally basking in the endless sunshine that followed. The past no longer hurts because the present finally shines. Thank you for watching this story of resilience and love. If you were touched by Clara's journey, please subscribe to our channel for more empowering stories that remind us of the incredible strength of the human spirit. Hit that subscribe button and join our community.